Good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for finding time to being with us today. It is Monday, the 20th of June, 2022. The show is Diaspora Dispatches. We get to bring you the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and it is a pleasure. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and watching. It's just about 7 minutes past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi, and I trust that your day has started off and is going on well. We start this afternoon from Ethiopia, and the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has called the horrific killing of scores of ethnic minorities in attacks in the country's west unacceptable, saying restoring peace and security is his government's priority. There is no official figure of the death toll in Saturday's attack, but some reports suggest it could be more than 100. The Prime Minister is often criticized for failing to deal with the worsening insecurity across Ethiopia. There's been an unprecedented surge in communal violence and ethnic conflicts since he came to power 4 years ago. Now, Mr. Abiy says his administration has zero tolerance for the killings of civilians. And the most recent incident was in Western Oromia, the country's largest region, and witnesses have told the BBC people were buried in mass graves and houses were set ablaze, and members of the Oromo Liberation Army, OLA, launched attacks on villages inhabited by minority ethnic Amaras. And then we go to Nigeria, where 3 people have died and 2 others injured after an attack on 2 churches in Kaduna State in northwest Nigeria. The State Commissioner of Internal Security, Samuel Aruan, said an unknown number of criminals and motorcycles entered 4 villages in a coordinated attacks, robbing people, and later targeted Maranatha Baptist and St. Moses Catholic churches. Mr. Aruan added that several people had also been kidnapped. Kaduna State Acting Governor Hadiza Sabue Balarabe has condemned the attack and called on the police to speed up the investigations. Nigeria is struggling to curb a deadly wave of kidnappings for ransom by armed gangs who frequently target unprotected rural communities, schools, and motorists on highways. Earlier this month, attackers targeted a church in the southwest of the country, killing over 40 people. The Belgian authorities have handed the tooth belonging to Congo independence leader Patrice Lumumba to his family in a ceremony in Brussels. It is the only part of him that is thought to still exist after he was executed and then his body dissolved in acid. In 1961, Belgium was the former colonial power, and an official inquiry said that some members of its government at the time were morally responsible for circumstances leading to his death. The man overseeing the destruction of the body, Belgian policeman Gerald Soot, took the tooth as a king of hunting trophy, he later said. As a kind of a hunting trophy, he later said. And then we head over to Rwanda. Delegates attending the Commonwealth Summit hosted this year by Rwanda begin work later today at a series of opening forums. The week-long summit is expected to attract over 5,000 participants from government, business, civil society under the theme Delivering a Common Future. Foreign ministers from the 54 Commonwealth countries are due to meet on Thursday, followed by the heads of government summit 2 days later. This year's meeting has an agenda about climate change, economic development, and opportunities for young people, with 60% of the Commonwealth population under the age of 30. The choice of Rwanda as a host has courted some controversy because of its human rights record. The Commonwealth is a group of countries that, in the main, were once governed by Britain, but others such as Rwanda and Mozambique have opted to join. Congolese Nobel Peace Prize winner Denis Mukwege and Interior Minister Daniel Aselo have called for an end to reported attacks targeting ethnic Tutsis living in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Scenes of people carrying machetes while hunting for Tutsis in the capital Kinshasa, the other major towns, circulated on social media over the weekend. Audio and video clips were also shared that identified the whereabouts of the Tutsis. The attacks came amid rising tensions between DR Congo a neighboring Rwanda. DR Congo accuses Rwanda of backing Congolese rebels that has halted all trade and cooperation agreements. Rwanda has denied supporting the M23 rebel groups, a Tutsi-led group. Last week, an anti-Rwanda demonstration resulted in the looting of Rwandan-owned shops in the eastern town of Goma. And Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has called for a meeting of the East African Community Heads of State today to discuss peace and security in the Democratic Republic of Congo, according to a government statement. Mr. Kenyatta, who is currently the head of the bloc, had last Wednesday urged the immediate deployment of a regional force to stop the violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The DRC is, however, opposed to Rwanda being part of the proposed regional force and has suspended bilateral relations with Kigali. As I have explained there earlier, and of course President Felix Tshisekedi has accused Rwanda of seeking to occupy his country to exploit its minerals and asked the UK to pressure Kigali to stop its aggression. Rwanda denies the allegations. And South Sudan's Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation, Manawa Peter Gatkoth-Gual, has died in a hospital in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. South Sudan's government has announced. First Vice President Riek Machar said the minister was flown to Egypt on Friday after developing chest pains in the capital, Juba. He underwent surgery on Saturday and died at 5 p.m. local time on Sunday, Mr. Machar said. In his condolence message, President Salva Kiir said he received the news of the death of Mr. Manawa with profound sorrow. The late minister was also a member of the political bureau of South Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition. His father, the late Peter Gatkoth-Gual, was a prominent South Sudanese politician. And at least 20 civilians have been killed in attacks blamed on jihadist fighters in northern Mali, a regional official now says. The violence on Saturday was near the city of Gao. The official told the French news agency that the situation was very worrying, with many civilians fleeing as the Islamist militants carried out atrocities. The UN says the security situation in the Gao and Mineka regions have deteriorated sharply. Early on Sunday, UN peacekeeper was killed by a mine in Kidal in the north part of the country. And then we end our bulletin in Tunisia, where weekly protests are still persistent in Tunisia. Tunisians took part in a demonstration organized by the National Salvation Front, a coalition of opposition parties and civil society groups, to protest against President Kais Saied and an upcoming July 25th constitutional referendum. President Kais Saied is seeking constitutional reforms which, according to him, will help in curbing extremism in the North African country. It's been almost a year since President Kais Saied sacked the government and took out all executive powers, arguing such measures were needed to save the country from imminent peril and fight widespread corruption. However, critics have since accused him of making a grab of one-man rule and denouncing an authoritarian rule. So that is the latest. So, of course, a couple of stories here have stuck out, and the issue with Tunisia, I think, is not a new thing. We will continue watching how this situation continues to develop. Last week, a lot of civil society and civil servants held a protest, so a lot of things were grounded, including, the airport, the operations of the airport. So I think it will have to come to a point where President Saied will have to sit down and hear what the majority of the people in Tunisia wants and talk about it. Of course, another sad report about an attack that happened over the weekend in Nigeria. Why we're still having attacks in churches, I still don't understand. There's a point in this country we used to have similar attacks when Al-Shabaab really was becoming a serious threat to even our daily activities in this country, including attending church services. And but what the government did is that it made a requirement for any public space, be it a church, be it a school, be it a mall, anywhere that the Kenyan public is likely to go congregate or go there in large numbers. Every church service the church must have some security apparatus in place. I went to church yesterday. At least I counted about 10 police officers around the church compound. And that is the situation among a lot of all churches. It is a requirement in this country because that became a threat. And so that was the government's response to that. So when I enter the church and I'm worshiping, I don't have to worry about my security. So that was an intervention that was taken, and that seems to have stopped these attacks that had started on the Kenyan churches. So the fact that the churches in Nigeria, we've seen several and numerous of these attacks happen, and there has not been any level of intervention, even at the local level and even at the national level. This baffles me. I don't know what other measures are supposed to be put in place. I don't know how Nigerians are supposed to go on about with their everyday lives if even very simple interventions cannot be put into place to ensure that they are safe. So the fact that these churches continues to be targeted, especially we already know what part of the country, the northern part, northwest of Nigeria and places closer to that, we already see this threat. Why can't the authorities have an intervention to ensure the people are safe? The people that go to worship in these churches are safe. The children that goes to these schools are safe. In the primary level, in colleges, you've seen, the kidnappings and all that. When it comes to the market areas, why can't we deploy security apparatus there? Anywhere that a good number of people are likely to be gathering. When it comes to public transport, it came to a point in our country where we also had a problem, and we still do, at the northern part of the country, but the government has really worked on its intelligence and is really trying its best, and we've seen that, to ensure that it really rises to the occasion and addresses some of these issues that keep rising as far as extremism is concerned. And as I've told you before, we have a problem with Al-Shabaab. It came to a point where any public bus had to be escorted by the police until it gets to its destination. So that sort of deterred, and the security apparatus along these routes that are considered to be susceptible to this kind of activities, there is a high intelligence that has been deployed and security apparatus among these roads to ensure that Kenyans are able to move freely, and on top of that, they're able to feel safe. So when I see these repeated attacks with the same fashion, the same characteristic, the same and nothing is being done in Nigeria, this baffles me a lot. This makes me wonder, surely the intervention that would be required for such a situation is not too much to ask. It's just the basic level of ensuring as a government the people are protected. The lives of the people, President Muhammadu Buhari, the lives of the people that elected you, that look up to you as the leader and as the president of that country, those people, their lives should matter enough for your government to try to put, strategies and interventions in place to ensure they're safe. Going to church now in some parts of Nigeria is like writing a suicide note, because there's no telling if you will go and come back home alive. And that shouldn't be the situation. So I think as much as the Sahel region, and indeed a lot of countries in Africa, are dealing with the issue of extremism, the manner in which the government of Nigeria, and we will continue to talk about it and criticize and call it out until maybe something is done, or I think probably at this time the people of Nigeria has given up, and maybe they're just waiting for the next administration and see how they'll handle the issue of security or lack thereof in Nigeria. But I think at this point, it's like the government itself does not know what to do with handling the situation of Nigeria. But we need to, the government needs to do something, surely. We can't keep having these attacks in churches. Have, police officers deployed there. The local administration should organize that with the local churches to ensure that people can worship and go back home safely. So these attacks, and this comes barely a couple of days ago when another church was attacked and over 40 people died. And this is an underestimation according to the actual reports. It's more people actually died from that attack in that church. And that is not the first one. We've seen it has been a sequence of these attacks. And the fact that it's being normalized is just one of those other news items in Nigerian news outlets. I think that is worrying. That is worrying. Too many lives are being are being lost in ways that could be avoided. So it's just a call on the government to try looking for better interventions that would assure the protection and the security of the people of Nigeria. So I'm saddened by that, and I'm sure when you come back here, perhaps next Monday, we will have another news about an attack that happened in another church, because it appears that has become a weekend thing. And on top of that, maybe others attacks that happen in villages. I don't know. Okay, so the issue of course, the attacks, the jihadist attacks have continued in Mali. And what I'm wondering is, as I was reading through this story, what I thought the Russian mercenary group Wagner was in Mali already. And the reason why they came there, that made the France troops to leave the country and other European Union troops to leave the country, was because they came to help Mali address the issue of insecurity. And as much as, the West were really against Russia showing up, but in my mind, I thought, okay, fine. If this mercenary group can actually help address the issue of insecurity in Mali, then that will be good for the region. But things have continued to get worse. So what are these mercenaries doing? The attacks have intensified in Mali. The jihadist fighters in the northern part of Mali have intensified, and now at least 20 civilians were killed on Saturday. So this has continued also. So this is something that has to be addressed. And early on Sunday, the UN peacekeeper was killed also by a mine in North. So attacks have intensified in Mali. We know after the removal of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, I think last year, he died. Early in the year, he died in January. He died at the age of 76, I believe. But he was removed from power. And one of the reasons why he was removed, he was ousted, was because of the issue of jihadist extremism that has become a cancer in that part of Africa. But so many months later, nothing has changed. The army is in control. You would think they would do better because they are the security operators of the country. But nothing really has changed. So that is also a worrying situation, another worrying situation. And currently, I think there's a meeting ongoing on the way forward on the Democratic Republic of Congo. I think there are some talks that have been organized by President Uhuru Kenyatta. It's happening here in Nairobi because President Uhuru Kenyatta is the current chair of the East African Community Bloc. So I think because of that, he does have a responsibility. So he brought together leaders from this region. And Rwanda was not supposed to be in this meeting. But if I'm not wrong, I saw some photos that were shared from State House. And I clearly saw President Paul Kagame, DRC President, Tshisekedi had protested that Paul Kagame should not be part of this meeting, and while the East African Community Bloc were looking to form an force to go fight against these rebels, the DRC said Congo's forces should not be part of that because it is accusing Congo of sponsoring and aiding and equipping the M23 rebels, a very deadly militant group in that part of the northern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so they're saying no. The M23, because Rwanda is supporting this. They're accusing Rwanda of supporting this. So we don't want Rwanda. So Rwanda's President Paul Kagame was present, I think, Paul Kagame was present, Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Evariste Ndayishimiye of Burundi, I think I saw him. I also saw the President of South Sudan, President Salva Kiir. The person who's missing in action is Madam Samia Suluhu. I don't know if she sent somebody or Tanzania really does not want to be part of all this. But I did not see her, so I don't know if she did send somebody to represent her in this meeting, which will be very telling. This is perhaps the second time when the Democratic Republic of Congo was being signed into being part of EAC. I don't know if she was not physically present. I think she was missing in action. And there was another time, there's a meeting that was being held to talk about DRC. She was missing in action. So today, I didn't see her photos there. So this is telling, perhaps, when you look at, this is telling perhaps that Tanzania does not want to be included in this mess that is going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. For what reason, I don't know, but I think this clearly can state the position of Tanzania and perhaps how the leadership there feels as far as this conflict is concerned. But I will not jump into conclusion. I think we'll wait for a statement after that meeting, and then we can have a conversation here, maybe tomorrow, God willing. And so, but it is something that is worrying in this region. And so I hope that a resolution can be reached as quick as possible. Now, let's talk about this tooth of Patrice Lumumba that was handed over to his family in Brussels today. Well, you know, Patrice Lumumba was independence leader, of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he was shot by a firing squad in 1961 with the backing of a former colonial power, Belgium. And of course, his body was buried in a shallow grave. It was later dug up and transported 200 kilometers, and then it was interred again, and then it was exhumed and then hacked to pieces, and finally it was dissolved in acid. Like, you've already killed a person. Now you have to do all that to a corpse. Like every time I read the story, the history of the surrounding, the death and whatever happened thereafter, it just sends, shivers, and, it's not good. Now, the Belgium police commander who was responsible for that, his name was Jihadist, and he oversaw and participated in the destruction of the remains, and he took the tooth, he later admitted. Can you imagine? He took the tooth with him to Belgium as a memento. You know the way you visit some place and you want to remember and you get something. Or it's like you're trophy hunting and you get something. So for him, he took the tooth, just one tooth. He also talked about a second tooth and two of the corpse's fingers. This is like a bad Halloween story here, but it happened. The body of Patrice Lumumba, and these have not been found. So he had taken a couple of fingers, Patrice Lumumba's fingers. Tell me how these people are human beings, or at least this person. Explain to me how a normal human being will think this is a normal thing to do. And so Suit's impulse to pocket the body parts echoed the behavior of European colonial officials down the decades who took remains back home as macabre mementos. But it also served as a final humiliation of a man that Belgium considered as an enemy. And Suit, appearing in a documentary in 1999, he had the audacity to even talk about and describing how the tooth and fingers he took was as a type of a hunting trophy. Can you imagine? Now, the language suggests that for the Belgian policeman, he was a policeman, the person, this Suit guy, Gerard Suit, he was a policeman. Lumumba, who was revered across the continent as a leading voice of African liberation, was less than a human being. So it was very significant for him in the manner in which the life of Lumumba ended, and for him to have taken things to show that he's no more, could only just add to his victory, I guess, dance or something. Now, Lumumba had risen to become a prime minister at the age of 34, very young. I think Patrice Lumumba and also Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, when you look at their history and how they challenged the status quo at that time, that made them lose their lives so early, because, Thomas Sankara's death also is very sad, and, and what happened to him. And so he became a prime minister at a very young age of 34. Elected in the final days of colonial rule, he headed the cabinet of the newly independent nation. In June 1960, at the handover of power, Belgian King Baudouin praised the colonial administration and spoke about his ancestor Leopold II as the civilizer of the country of the Democratic Republic of Congo. There was no mention of the millions who died or were brutalized under his reign when he ruled what was then known as the Congo Free State as his personal property. Okay, let me just pause there. the Democratic Republic of Congo, according to this leader of Belgium, Leopold II, was his personal property, okay? And at that time, it was known as Congo Free State, okay? Now, this failure to acknowledge the past foreshadowed years of denial in Belgium, which it has only now begun to come to terms with. And as we have seen, I think the King of Belgium was in Congo last week, and I think that, you know what? Anyway, in an address that was not scheduled on the official program during that time, after that person praised the Leopold II and how Belgium had come to civilize the Democratic Republic of Congo, Patrice Lumumba was not scheduled to speak that day, but somehow he got an opportunity to speak. The Prime Minister, who was Patrice Lumumba at that time, spoke about the violence and the degradation that the Congolese had suffered. And in devastating rhetoric, interrupted by rounds of applause and a standing ovation, when he concluded, he described the humiliating slavery that was imposed on the people of Congo and other Africans by force. Okay, the Belgians were stunned, and they did not like it, because never before had a black African dared to speak like this in front of the Europeans. So the Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, who had been described as an illiterate thief in the Belgian press, was seen as having humiliated the king and other Belgian officials. So they were saying this illiterate thief, that's what they were calling Patrice Lumumba. How dare he, with his black skin, stand there and lecture us about human rights abuses and how we have degraded his people. And yet, according to the Belgians, we had come to civilize these black Africans, okay? I'm trying not to get annoyed as an African, but you know, that is the background story. I can imagine what was happening during that time. So some have said that with this speech, Lumumba signed his own death warrant, but his murder the following year was also wrapped up in Cold War maneuvers and a Belgian desire to maintain control. The Americans also plotted his death because of a possible pivot towards the Soviet Union and his uncompromising anti-colonialism. So they were seeing maybe he could soften up and try warming up to the Soviet Union at that time. Okay, and so Americans have also been roped up in this murder tragedy, while a British official wrote a memo suggesting that killing him was an option. Nevertheless, so these are three countries, Belgium, the US, and British. Nevertheless, there seemed to be a personal element to the way Lumumba was vilified and pursued. The total destruction of the body, as well as a way to get rid of the evidence, seems like an effort to obliterate Lumumba from the memory. There would be no memorial, making it almost impossible to deny that he existed at all. It was not enough just to bury him, but still we remember him today, okay? So anyway, shortly after independence, the country was hit by a secessionist crisis as the mineral-rich southeastern Katanga province declared that it was splitting off from the rest of the country. See, it started early, and I think that is what set up the Democratic Republic of Congo to what it is today and the chaos that we've seen play out. In the political chaos that followed, Belgian troops were sent on the ground, and they would protect the Belgian nationals, but they also helped support the Katanga administration, which was seen as more sympathetic, the one that wanted to secede. Lumumba himself was dismissed as a prime minister by the president, and just over a week later, Army Chief of Staff Joseph Mobutu seized power. You remember? Mobutu Sese Seko? There you go. So Lumumba was then placed under house arrest. And when you read through the history of Mobutu, he was the gatekeeper for the Belgians. So when you read about the atrocities that took place when the West and their human rights, whatever, looked on the other side and didn't care what was happening in the DRC, because they benefited. Mobutu could, they could use him to access the natural resources that, the DRC have. So they installed Mobutu there, to be their gatekeeper. And Lumumba was then placed under house arrest escaped and rearrested in December 1960 before being held in the west of the country. His presence there was seen as a possible source of instability, and the Belgian government encouraged his transfer to Katanga during the flight there on the 16th January 1961. He was assaulted. He was also beaten on arrival as the Katangan leaders pondered what to do with him. Eventually, it was decided that he would face a firing squad. On January 17th, he was shot along with 2 allies. This is when Police Commissioner Soot stepped in, realizing that the bodies could be discovered. A decision was taken to make them disappear once and for all. There must be no trace left, according to a testimony on somebody who wrote about the assassination of Lumumba. Armed with saws, sulfuric acid, face masks, and whiskey, Soot then led a team to move, destroy, and dispose of the remains. It was a process that he was later to describe as traveling to the depths of hell. The fact that he even had the audacity to describe how all this went down. But it was not until 40 years later, in 1999, that he publicly acknowledged that he was involved and that he still actually had a tooth in his possession. He said he had got rid of the other body parts he took. Remember, he had taken some fingers as well. This is, I can't even begin to tell you, but that is the sad story behind independence hero Patrice Lumumba, who died a very painful death at a very young age, and he was a threat to the colonial masters, and so they had to get rid of him by all means necessary. So that is why now that tooth, this monster, because that is what this person is, held, was being given back to his family today. And I think there was a mausoleum built in his honor, and that tooth will be placed there. I think it's even gold-plated. This is sick. Anyway, on that sick note, I will see you here tomorrow. Thank you so much for your time. And this has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Mugutu. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.